If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's Thursday. I don't know if you guys are excited about this, but I'm very excited. The temperature is actually supposed to drop. Have you heard about this, Joe? We're supposed to get some fall weather. It's coming, so just hang in there a little bit longer. I'm sick of all this hot weather. Let me tell you. Hey, folks, the telephone number 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the conversation this morning, that's 870-275-9799. We have a great show for you coming up at the bottom of this hour. Former congressman from Colorado, also from that group, We Build the Wall, which is a privately funded. They're building the wall at the border on private land. They've had more success than the federal government's had. Tom Tancredo will be back with us coming up at the bottom of this hour. An hour from then, 7:33, we're going to have a Washington County local government update from Justice of the Peace, Patrick Deakins. Always great to have him on. In the meantime, the state of Arkansas this morning, the numbers are out, and we have record revenue. Once again, we have record revenue, and not just by a little, but by a lot, coming in to the state of Arkansas. Now, this is, and I'm going to get to more of this at 7. Also, we've got a China update for you at 7 as well. Gene McVeigh has written this piece on Chinese organ harvesting. I read it yesterday, and it blew my mind. I mean, it's very good research, and honestly, I think it's because, we were talking to General Spaulding, Brigadier General Spaulding, about his book in China and everything else. You just don't want to miss today's show. It's going to be jam-packed full of information. All right, so the state of Arkansas posting record revenue. Now this is why it's so frustrating to me, okay? I'm going to get to the numbers here in just a minute, but we're now paying more money at the pump this week, starting October 1st. I mean, I drove by on Monday, which was September 30th, and what was it? Gas was $2.15. Just this same gas station that I drive by. I think it was lower in some places of town. Walmart's gas is really, really cheap, but this was like an Exxon. And the next day it was $2.19. And there you go. There's your 3 cents, 4 cents really, but there you go. So that's frustrating. We're paying more money for these roads, and yet they're posting all these record revenues, and I can't help but think about State Representative John Payton. He said that we don't have to raise taxes for roads because since the time he's been down there, we have basically got a revenue increase of $500 million. If you just take the last 4 years, it's just more and more and more and more. The problem with that, though, is our governor continues to increase spending year over year. 2.3%, 3%, whether it's $133 million, $160 million, $70 million, it just continues to go up under his term. That's one of his legacies. I mean, say what you want. The Chinese deals and everything else, that's his legacy. Arkansas Works, that's his legacy. But also the fact we just can't seem to quit spending more and more and more money each year. So here's this headline. I actually, there's the Gazette article. They've got an article, but also Talk Business and Politics has one. And for some reason, Wesley Brown's article, I feel like over at Talk Business and Politics, is just a little bit easier to understand. So we are 3 months into fiscal year 2020 here in Arkansas, and the budget coffers are overflowing. Overflowing. The Department of Finance and Administration reported yesterday that year-to-date, July to September, net available revenues grew by 2.9%, or $42.9 million to nearly $1.516 billion from a year ago, and 2.6%, or $38.9 million when compared with the state's official budget forecast. So they're over forecast. I mean, they're fleecing us. You know what I mean? I mean, we are out here in this private economy. We are working. We are trying to put food on the table. We're trying to make ends meet. We're paying taxes. We're paying income taxes, this is where the main increase is from our income taxes, corporate tax as well. And they're just getting more and more of our money. But they came to us, and look at this, $38 million from this time a year ago. And yet they just raised our taxes in this fiscal year, a net tax increase of $70 million. And we're in 3 months, they're up $38 million from a year ago? Wow, that's a lot of money. It's a key economic indicator that includes collections from all available categories totaled in over $1.693 billion at the end of September, a gain of 2.2%. So actually, we're talking about way more money than just $36.8 million when compared to year ago levels, 1.9%, or $32.4 million above the DFNA forecast. I mean, it's a great month for the government. It really is. But I think the only thing I can take from this is, and yeah, I know the economy's good. I know the employment numbers are down. Folks, they did not have to raise our taxes to the degree they did. Now, they might not have a sure funding source for Medicaid expansion, but I still think even then, I mean, this report today, in light of the fact that we just started paying an increase in gas tax this week, is really frustrating, considering we had legislators saying, there is an alternative to pay for our roads without raising taxes. And I know some people are like, well, I don't want to fund highways that way because it could be uncertain. The collections could be down. Well, you don't have to do it that way forever. But in light of the fact that we are in a good economic, we are in good economic times, why go back to the people and ask for more money? Anyway, we'll get to this more later. The internet sales tax obviously contributed to this as well. They say sales tax receipts are a little down, actually, from their forecast. But overall, it's above their projections. They've taken more money than they even thought they would from us. And this is not the first time we've seen this happen. We saw it happen at the end of the fiscal year, right after we got out of session as well. And so the question is, it's just like, we are giving the government so much money. How much is enough? Where's the line? And we are one of the highest tax states in the country, and we're one of the lowest in per capita income. I think those two are linked. What do you think? Now, we're going to break here, not actually go to break, but I want to transition to some national news. Here's President Donald Trump. Joe, go ahead. Here he is yesterday. This was bombshell information. It's really only been about 2 weeks since this whole whistleblower CIA trying to do what the FBI couldn't do with Russia collusion. Now the CIA is trying to do something with Ukraine. Here is President Trump talking to John Roberts about a New York Times story that broke yesterday that blows up the left's entire narrative. You probably won't hear it from mainstream outlets. Go ahead.
Well, you shouldn't be asking two questions.
Well, you're going to want to answer.
Do me a favor. Ask one of the.
I will, but
finished
I think you'll want.
John,
I think you'll want to answer this question.
Ask
sir.
one of the finished presidents.
And then can I come back to you because I think you'll want to answer.
We'll talk
this one.
later. Sure. Well, it sounds like it might be a good question. Let me see if I like the question. Go ahead. Maybe for the first time in 3 years, I'll have a good question, and I'll love it.
There is a report that came out just before you and President Niinistö walked out here that the whistleblower met with a staff member of Adam Schiff prior
I
to
love
the
that question.
being filed.
It shows that Schiff is a fraud.
And
I love that question. Thank you, John.
So can I finish asking?
Yes, there's nothing to finish.
So the whistleblower, according to this report, met with a member of Adam Schiff's staff. You got it right there. You know it.
I hate to say it's the New York Times. I can't believe they wrote it.
Your response to the
Maybe
fact
they're getting better.
Your response to the fact that happened and that Schiff may have learned some of what the whistleblower knew prior to the complaint.
Well, I think it's a scandal that he knew before. I go a step further. I think he probably helped write it. Okay? That's what the word is. And I think it's, I give a lot of respect for the New York Times for putting it out. Just happened as I'm walking up here, they handed it to me. And I said to Mike, I said, whoa, that's something. That's big stuff. That's a big story. He knew long before, and he helped write it too. It's a scam. It's a scam.
Stop.
Just to finish on this.
All right, so
I appreciate it. I love
it is a scam, and by the way, the media is freaking out that Trump is saying that Schiff actually wrote it. When's the last time the president's been wrong about stuff like that? Remember when he said he was wiretapped and everybody made fun of him, and then we found out he was wiretapped? Let me tell you something. Yeah, I think Adam Schiff wrote this. I absolutely think he did. Or somebody connected to Adam Schiff on his staff. From Turning Point USA, Benny Johnson, go to this Twitter. A holy bombshell. Whistleblower leaked Trump-Ukraine allegations to Adam Schiff before reporting it to the Inspector General. In doing so, they broke multiple federal laws and are not subject to whistleblower protections. They're now facing federal prison. A link to thefederalist.com. That's fascinating, but think about this. This really does give credence to the idea that the deep state's trying to initiate a coup. A CIA officer goes to Adam Schiff's committee, and then before he has an attorney or anything, Adam Schiff and his staff advise this dude to get an attorney and file a whistleblower complaint. The attorney he got has worked for Clinton and Schumer. You talk about collusion, whatever that means. This was not some independent whistleblower who went through the proper channels and, I saw something, I just need to say something. No, this guy was a partisan, or he wouldn't have gone to Adam Schiff in the first place. Here is Adam Schiff lying to everyone. Scroll down right there. Go ahead and click this. This was last week as we were just learning of this so-called whistleblower. Listen to this.
Do you want to hear from the whistleblower? What protections could you provide to the whistleblower? And then you also said that the DNI is refusing to turn over this stuff, citing a request from a higher authority. The insinuation left, at least for me and others, was that the president himself had intervened. Is that the insinuation you sought to provide? And if so, what basis do you have for making that insinuation?
We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower. We would like to, but I'm sure the whistleblower has concerns that he has not been advised, as the law requires, by the Inspector General or the Director of National Intelligence, just as to how he is to communicate with Congress.
All right, that's Adam Schiff.
Do you want to hear?
We have not talked with the whistleblower. According to the New York Times, I mean, that's not true. That's not a true statement. Now, this is, the media, I'm telling you, they can't stand it. Go back to this other Real Clear Politics. Listen to this. Trump, the whistleblower, should be protected if the whistleblower is legitimate. Go ahead.
Military and millions of people and everything else. We better get smart. We better start focusing on the right things. Because what they did with this nonsense, think of it. You have a perfect conversation with a president of another country, Ukraine in this case. And they try and say, let's impeach him. They've been trying to impeach me from the day I got elected. I've been going through this for 3 years. They've been trying to impeach me from the day I got elected. And you know what? They failed. And this is the easiest one of all, because this one is based on one conversation. What about Obama's conversation with the president of Russia, where he says, hey, tell Vlad I'll talk to him after the election's over. I'll talk to him. Nobody reports that, right? That's stuff you should report. But you people should be ashamed of yourself. We have the most dishonest media that you can imagine, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. Okay, I think I've answered most of your questions. What do you think? Yes?
Stop. Going through this for 3 years. I mean, this is something I think is going to resonate with the American people, just by the way. Like, people are sick of this. They are so sick of this. Yes, there are people that have Trump derangement syndrome, but they're sick of it. You know what? I read this great piece the other day. This was sent to me by somebody who said, if you're getting depressed with everything that the mainstream media is doing to Trump, read this article. It's an article from the Conservative Treehouse, a guy by the name of, it's just entitled Stand, is what it's, is there an author by this? These days, who knows? But it was posted by somebody, I guess, under the handle Sundance. And in this article, it talks about something called, something called cold anger, and how there's this silent majority that has this cold anger. And it details that President Trump is the person standing between them and you. President Trump is our weapon in a way. It's a fascinating read. It's entitled "Stands at the Conservative Treehouse." I just want to read you just a little bit of this, okay? They've gone too far. Donald Trump supporters are racist, uneducated, or unenlightened. Fill in the blank. This hate-filled sentiment is clear within the latest corrupt and targeted impeachment attack against the office of president. Now the media narrative controllers are fully engaged, gleeful with impeachment bloodlust amid their broadcast brethren. The raw political corruption is now extreme. Do not look away. As we bear witness, anyone trying to convince us this entire assembly of our union is headed in the right direction, well, they might want to revisit their proximity to the 2020 election ballpark, because they're not just out of the city, they're also out of the same state the election ballpark is located in. Then again, the media knows that. David Mamet, remember David Mamet, this playwright, remember him? He came out with this book the same time as the late Andrew Breitbart years ago. David Mamet, a closet conservative for a long time. He had a famous saying, essentially, in order for the Democrats, liberals, progressives to continue their illogical belief systems, they have to pretend not to know a lot of things. By pretending not to know, there's no guilt, no actual connection to conscience. Denial of truth allows easier trespass. Denial of truth allows easier trespass. This is true in the state of Arkansas. This is true. Local governments, city governments, county governments, state governments. The denial of truth allows easier trespass. There's a level of anger far deeper, more consequential than expressed rage or visible behavior. It's called cold anger. Cold anger does not need to go to violence. For those who carry it, no conversation is needed when we meet. You cannot poll it or measure it, specifically because most who carry it avoid discussion, and that decision has nothing whatsoever to do with any form of correctness. We watched the passage of Obamacare at 1:38 a.m. on the day before Christmas Eve in 2009. We watched the Senate, then the House exempt passing amnesty in 2014. We know exactly how it passed. We know exactly why it passed. We don't need to stand around talking about it. We know what lies are hidden behind cloture and the uniparty schemes. We watched the 2009 $900+ billion stimulus being spent each year, every year, for 7 consecutive years. Omnibus, Porculus, QE1, QE2, bailouts, crony capitalism. We know exactly how this works. We know exactly why this ruse is maintained. We don't need to stand around talking about it. We're beyond talking. We accept that the entire Senate voted to block President Trump's ability to use recess appointments in 2017, 2018, and 2019. Every single Democrat and Republican. Cold anger absorbs betrayal silently, often prudently. We waited each year, every year, for 10 years to see a federal budget, only to be given another omnibus spending bill. We've watched the ridiculing of cops, the riots, the lack of support for laws and their enforcement. We've been absorbing all of that. We've been exposed to violence upon us by paid operatives of the organized DNC machine. We know the media trying to hide. It doesn't change our level of information. Cold anger is not hatred. It's far more purposeful. We watched in 2012 as the Democrat Party thrice denied God during their convention. The doors to evil enterprise opened by official proclamation and request. Cold anger takes notice of the liars, even from great distance, seemingly invisible to the mob. Cold anger will still hold the door open for a riot goer mannerly. We watched our borders being intentionally unsecured. We've watched Islamic terrorists slaughter Americans as our politicians proclaim their uncertainty of motive. Cold anger evidenced is more severe because it's more strategic and more purposeful. This is a fantastic, it goes on to talk about transgender bathrooms. It goes on to talk about the president. I mean, you skip down here. It talks about that Trump supporters know exactly who Donald Trump is. We know what he is. More importantly, we know what he is not. And he's not the status quo. He's exactly what we need at this moment. He is our weapon. And so I started thinking about this, and we've got to go to break here in a minute for 1 minute. We got to take a 1 minute break. I started thinking about this. This article does a really good job of looking at the general strategy of what's been going on to the American people, what's been happening to us, the shrinking of the middle class, the higher taxes, the left would call it this income gap or this, inequality or whatever. But it's really just the slow, as government grows, our freedom shrinks. Here in Arkansas, with our state budget ballooning, more money, people don't understand. More money coming into the government actually means that your freedom is going to shrink, your liberty. You are less free now. This has all been happening, and when these people are attacking Trump, this article actually makes the argument, they're actually attacking him because they want to continue the direction we've been going, which is one that is not serving the American people's interest. And so it was a really good, the way they articulated it here, that the president is the only person at this point, well, not the only person, but practically nobody would ever fight back. There's no other person who would have, who's presidential material that would have ever fought back the way he is. And he's standing literally between us and them. And when you think about it those ways, when you think about it, what the Supreme Court means, how religious freedom would have been under attack if Hillary Clinton, he's literally standing in the gap, stopping them from continuing this long trek of growing government and our individual liberties shrinking. We got to take a break for 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment. Hey, welcome back to the program. We have a special treat. So at universities really across the country, but specifically here in the state of Arkansas, there are college Republican clubs, and we're lucky that they're still approved by college universities, honestly, at this point. But we have one of those, a president of the A-State College Republicans. His name is Chris Hayes, and he joins us now. Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Fantastic. So what can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? First of all, like where are you from, what you majoring in?
All right. Well, I'm originally from Des Arc. It's around Searcy. I'm double majoring in finance and supply chain management, and I'm a senior here at Arkansas State.
Okay, so you're a senior. So what is that? I guess you've worked your way up to become president of the College Republicans. Obviously,
Yeah.
Freshmen don't become president of the College Republicans.
Not usually.
Okay.
Right.
So what was your what was your experience like? Leading up to this point.
Really, I was just a member. I tried to help out as much as I could. We tried to get involved with local elections, local events.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I'm going to post this link to this Conservative Treehouse article in the Facebook feed just as soon as we go to break here. It'll be under the when I post it, it comes up under Conduit News. So I'm going to go and post this article just so you guys can read this because it's really fascinating. Did anybody hear about this? I thought this was interesting. Hot Springs Casino is upping minimum wage for their hourly workers. Oaklawn Racing Casino Resort announced Monday. Well, I guess this is last week, so this is a couple days old. They announced Monday the minimum wage for employees who don't receive tips will rise to $13 an hour from $9.75 an hour, effective at the end of the month. See, the pay boost affects 970 full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees and comes during a $100 million expansion of the resort. Hey, you know what? I got no problem with, private entities deciding to pay their workers more, right? But man, there's just this movement. It's like, well, no, we need $15 an hour. This artificial, the government setting the minimum wage fundamentally violates an individual's right to contract, in my opinion. What do you think? Sound off. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce.
the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
Like, we hopefully have a group here at the Congressman's Cook-Off here next week.
Okay.
Just kind of volunteering,
Yeah.
doing whatever we can to help.
So you're talking about Congressman Rick Crawford's got this chili cook-off here in a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. That's always a really fun time where everybody enters their chili in the contest, and we get to pick a winner. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you became. I guess I'm assuming you're conservative. I mean, you're the president of the 8th State College Republicans, and so how did you become a conservative?
Well, I grew up in a conservative family. I really kind of started paying attention around the second Obama election, so what they're doing, and just a lot of that I don't agree with, between the health care for all and trying to take God out of schools. It's just something I didn't care for, and to me the conservative platform stands a lot more along the lines of my beliefs.
Yeah. So tell me about I mentioned earlier the college the college Republicans, and we still have these chapters across the country of college Republicans, but they're more welcome here probably at Southern universities than other places. But are there any consequences, or your peer groups, are they upset that you guys are young and are conservative?
I've never really had any backlash or knowing what it has.
Good.
Like I said, we're in the South. Of course, it's a more conservative region, but you do see more like out west, California, that area.
Yeah.
There's a lot more pushback.
Yeah. Do you recognize any maybe a liberal bias in classes or from professors?
Being a business student, you don't get so much of it, but some of the liberal arts classes I've taken, I think you can see a little bit, but nothing like major, just trying to pound it into you or indoctrinate you.
Well, I feel like that's a good point. You're basically saying, when it comes to money, it's a lot more black and white.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't really care about your feelings that much. When it comes to a business, you're either making money or you're not making money.
Right.
So that's got to be, that's kind of where that really is. We talk about
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program this morning. We do have a special treat. Once again, I want to introduce you to the former congressman from the great state of Colorado. His name's Tom Tancredo. He joins us now. Tom, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well because, for one thing, I'm back home in Colorado, not in Washington.
That's good. Well, so, you're doing a great job. You're speaking and representing this great organization, We Build the Wall. You can go, folks, to, webuildthewall.us. How is that going right now?
That's great. We have completed, of course, our first endeavor. It's a wall that goes from the Rio Grande River, right where Texas and New Mexico meet at the Rio Grande. And it goes up the New Mexico side, up a mountain called Mount Cristo Rey, and it's an area where the Border Patrol and the other parts of government that are designed to do these kinds of things said, no, can't do it. Impossible, too expensive, too difficult, it would take too long. And so this poor guy that owned that property, that it was adjacent to the border, it was a brickyard. He had to finally close it because of the inundation of illegal immigrants across that border and into his property, stealing everything they could get their hands on, vandalizing everything else. Finally, and he kept begging the Border Patrol to do something about it. The Corps of Engineers said, no way. So we came in, we completed our wall, which is, by the way, I'm going to sound like the president here, okay? This is the greatest wall that's ever been built on the planet Earth. Anyway, it really is something. Even the Border Patrol said it's the best barrier that exists on the border. The steel is better than anything the government uses on theirs. The We call it the Deplorables Highway. It is absolutely, honestly, people should go to webuildthewall.us and take a look at it. It really is great.
Well,
so that's completed, and we did it, by the way, 10th of the time, a third of the cost that the government was planning for. So we're on to the next phase.
Well, and we've talked about this before. People can go donate, but there's been so many just regular folks across this country that have donated to this effort because you guys are actually getting it done. So can you tell us what is the next phase?
Well, I can tell you we have 3 that are, maybe I should say, in the pipeline, and one that's very close, but I can't tell you specifically where, because the minute we say where we're going to do it, the other side, of course, goes in, finds a judge, tries to get an injunction, and causes us lots of delays and problems. So we try to do it, we get everything in place, and then quickly
move,
do everything we can. That's right. But
hopefully you guys could swoop in with helicopters and just build it at night, and nobody would even, they wake up the next day and it'd be built.
Well, it was kind of like that in what we did down in Sunland Park, which is the one I just described, because, believe me, perhaps the toughest part of all this is getting the permits from the various local entities, the cities, counties, because many of these places along the border, how do I want to put this? Corruption doesn't stop at the border, okay?
Yeah.
And so there are people on both sides. This particular town we had to work with had been taken over once, if not twice. I can't remember for sure if it was the second time, but I know once that the state of New Mexico, the governor had to take over and appoint a new mayor, police chief, all the rest, because they'd all been sent to jail or corrupted. Yeah. And so it's a difficult place to work, and so you have to be very judicious in the way you approach it.
Absolutely. We're talking again with former Congressman from Colorado, Tom Tancredo. Okay, he's advisory board member at We Build the Wall. That's webuildthewall.us. Now, he's also the author of a book that came out back in the Bush era, and it's entitled "In Mortal Danger: The Battle for America's Border and Security." So this has been one of your key issues of research for a long time about what these decades and decades of unchecked illegal immigration has done to this country.
Yes, sir. It has been my political raison d'etre. I started actually way back, believe this or not, 1976. I was elected to the Colorado legislature, and my first bill ever was to repeal, I should say, because Colorado was the first state to actually adopt a bilingual education program. So I was a teacher at the time, and I saw what it did to my classroom, what had happened to the kids that were in it, were pulled out. And I thought, who thought of this idea? Who believed this was a good thing for children? And so when I went into the legislature, I did, in fact, introduce legislation to eventually, to abolish it. I would always get them for about a third of their funding, but eventually I did get on the Joint Budget Committee and did reform it pretty dramatically. But it has been that long that I've been involved with this. Yeah. And as years go by, you become more and more aware of the importance of this, of the danger that it poses, of the damage that it does to the country. And so it's pretty hard to just ignore it when you consider that illegal immigration, maybe I can say immigration, both legal and illegal, is made up of people who do not want to assimilate into America. It touches and it damages almost every part of American life. I mean, whether you're talking the school systems that are inundated, the healthcare systems that are inundated, the prisons that are, the murders that occur in these sanctuary cities, well, all over, of course, thousands of people, and literally, I'm not kidding, I'm not being hyperbolic here, thousands of people have been killed in this country by people who are here illegally, who should never have been here. And so when you recognize the totality of it and the impact on the culture itself, you say to yourself, well, how can I not actually pay a lot of attention to this issue?
You're exactly right. And, we've talked to angel moms, we've talked to angel dads, and I know at least two of the ones I've talked to, are affiliated with We Build the Wall.
Yes, sir. They're on the board.
But I really think this is an interesting take. That you have been, again, since the Bush era, this has been your key issue. You know what you're talking about. You saw what happened in Colorado when they first, like you said, started teaching, language bilingually. And yet it has spread into the state of New York to the point where, and this was the headline over at the New York Post, city bans calling someone an illegal alien out of hate. This is September 26th, so it's a couple of days ago, but it says right here, it's now against the law in New York City to threaten someone with a call to immigration authorities or refer to them as an illegal alien when motivated by hate. What are your thoughts on that?
Of course, it's ridiculous. It's Orwellian, is what it is. But I must tell you that I wrote for several years. I wrote for Breitbart, column every week, and at least two of them I remember doing on this issue of hate speech and how we were going to erode the First Amendment guarantees against for free speech by this hate group mentality, and that's exactly what's happening. I assure you it's not going to stop here. Now, maybe this will be, I hope it will be, of course, overturned, but it will not stop. The idea of stopping you from saying something because somebody else believes you shouldn't is part and parcel of liberal ideology. They can't handle, what was the great line, you can't handle the truth?
Yeah.
And here's the deal. So this is the way I really look at this whole thing. And it does come from having been involved in it for so long. And it does deal even with the most recent activity around impeachment. We have, for at least 50 years, if not more, we have moved in this country, it seemed inexorably to the left. It doesn't matter who was president or who was controlling Congress. It always moved that way, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Maybe Reagan was able to, impede that direction, but the flow in that direction. But indeed, that's been the way it has worked, and it was all leading to what Barack Obama said was his goal of thoroughly transforming America. This has been happening for a long time. It puts a mindset together on the part of the left that they believe they have believed for a long time that it's inevitable. They're going to win. They will transform America. They can look historically at the movement and say, yep, I can see it happening. Well, one part of that, a catalyst in that movement, has been illegal immigration, or just massive immigration of people who do not assimilate, people who will become a permanent underclass, constantly demand more from government, therefore expanding government, therefore bringing about this transformation of America into a totally socialistic system. Now, that I think, that's my perspective here, and I it's because I spend a lot of time on immigration, I know, but I really believe that that's why they are fighting this so hard, fighting the changes that Trump is trying to bring about, and indeed it develops not only into a hatred for Trump, but to a hatred for his attempts to change the direction, not only stop that leftward movement, but maybe even reverse it, especially through his judicial appointments. So I think this is what is a big part of what we're experiencing in Washington, D.C. The immigration is so important to the left, and it has been aided and abetted by Republicans, because you have Republicans who are open borders people because of the money that flows to them, their campaigns through the Chamber of Commerce and others. So that's a long, answer, but I really
I think it's
believe it.
really comprehensive. We're talking with former Congressman from Colorado, Tom Tancredo, and I just want to ask you, one more question. You talk about fundamentally transforming the country like Barack Obama said he was going to do. Then you also, people who are concerned about illegal immigration, they're called xenophobes by the left. You're, and maybe some people on the right do say, we don't need to allow these people from other countries, other cultures into our country in this way. It's unchecked. It's illegal. They're changing the country, or they're, these are things that the left says are terrible attitudes to have, xenophobic. But let's just be clear here. Right now, in the state of New York or the city of New York, they're restricting the use of words.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
By the very fundamental idea, indirectly, illegal immigration is a thing. And the First Amendment, somehow, the governments are responding to it, liberal ones, by diminishing your First Amendment right to use the word illegal alien. So there are massive changes, fundamental changes afoot.
Absolutely. And believe me when I say that it is part of this overall plan to restructure the essence of America. How do you do this? Well, you have to change the population to a certain extent. And I'm not talking about color or ethnicity. It's got nothing to do with it. I'm talking about attitude.
Yeah.
Talking about the desire to actually have the government be your protector. And there's the oldest adage in politics that I believe is true, and that is, when you rob Peter to pay Paul, you can always count on Paul's vote. And so, therefore, this is why this promise of utopia, this Orwellian idea, works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Congressman Tom Tancredo, we really appreciate you being on the program again. Again, from We Build the Wall. It's WeBuildTheWall.us. Project number 2 is underway. We don't know where yet, but you can donate there, WeBuildTheWall.us. Also, check out his book, In Mortal Danger, The Battle for America's Border and Security. Congressman Tancredo, it's always great to have you on, sir. We appreciate it.
Likewise. Pleasure
Alrighty.
to be with
Yes,
you,
sir.
Tom.
Be safe. Folks, we're going to be back here in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality on this show, that may actually be it. Like small business, because that's where you throw all of these emotions, all these feelings. Don't you feel like the left is kind of they gear a lot of their policies towards narratives and emotions instead of critical thinking and facts?
Definitely. I think you really see that, like when they get to the intersectional stuff and your privilege and all that.
So what does that mean, intersectional? I really don't even know. I mean, that's kind of past my time.
Right. My understanding is, different people have different levels of privilege. Like me and you, we're white guys. I'm assuming Christian, conservative.
Yes.
We're on the bottom. We have the least intersectional points or whatever because we're the most privileged.
Okay, so more intersectional points is good, less intersectional points is bad.
If you're a liberal.
Okay.
But so like a minority who's not straight, not Christian, they...
Money, power, prestige, essence. Available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of China, man, let me tell you, this right here, this quote, Dennis, on our Facebook page, right now you can watch the program. If you're listening to us, remember, you can always watch us, facebook.com/Conduit News. Quote, we cannot expect Americans to jump from capitalism to communism, but we can assist their elected leaders in giving Americans small doses of socialism until they suddenly awake to find they have communism. This is a quote from Nikita Khrushchev, 1959. By the way, anybody ever see that movie, that comedy, Steve Buscemi, about the death of Stalin? Boy, that's hilarious. If y'all haven't seen that, y'all need to check that out. It's a really funny, movie about, what happened, the scramble for power, or the vacuum that was there when Stalin died. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but we've had Brigadier General Spaulding on the program to talk about China several times, I think, in the last month. Well, him detailing what's going on with the organ harvesting has been just absolutely eye-opening to me. And it's not just me. I think listeners of this program have done their own research. One of them, Gene McVeigh, who's a Republican pioneer in this state, was a Republican before it was cool to be Republican. And he has written an article that's comprehensive, well-sourced and researched about this Chinese organ harvesting process, and it is absolutely gut-wrenching to read. And we will have more on that, matter of fact, coming up. Here's the thing. The state of Arkansas decided to pass a gas tax increase that went into effect on October the 1st. This gas tax increase means that they are taxing gas twice. A lot of you don't know this. Some of you do. You already pay a state gas tax when you go to the pump. So the product of gasoline is already being taxed. What the state of Arkansas did was they decided to tax it a second time, but technically a first time. What I mean by that is they're taxing gas. This latest gas tax increase is at the wholesale level. So it's taxed at the wholesale level, and that translates to a higher price at the pump down the road because corporations don't pay taxes, people do. And so that's why you're seeing a 3-cent increase at the pump this week, or a 6-cent increase if you are a diesel person. So that's what's going on here. And by the way, I think that what they did by taxing gas a second time, I do think that is a violation of the Arkansas Constitution because they failed to get the 3/4 requirement that you would have to have if you wanted to, raise an existing tax. They would claim, well, no, we already have this tax, but it's the same product. So it violates the very spirit of why we have that amendment in our Constitution that says if you want to raise or lower an existing tax, you have to have 75% of approval of both chambers. They did not achieve that, but I digress. It is really tough to swallow when you read headlines, and we already told you we read you the Talk Business and Politics side. Now the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. It's really tough to swallow. They're taking more money from us this year. The gas tax increase is the beginning, and yet we've got headlines that in the month of September, the revenue topped forecast here in the state of Arkansas once again. In September, the revenue increased by $29.9 million. $29.9 million over the same month a year ago. Total revenue was $664.5 million. Think about that. That beat the state's forecast by 25.6 million, or 4%. So they basically just got a 4% increase last month. And yet, they increased our taxes net by $70 million this fiscal year. And yet we have half of that, essentially, being, with excess, with increases. And it's really frustrating because there were reasonable voices who didn't want to raise your taxes, let's say at the pump, because they knew that we were going to have revenue surpluses, because we have been having revenue surpluses for 4 or 5 years now. The problem is that those revenue surpluses continue to get spent because we continue to raise our budget every year, 130 million, 140, 160, 170. We continue to do that year in and year out. And that's what's so frustrating about this. Here's a quote from Michael Wickline. The net in September increased by 34.5 million of 6.1% from the same month a year ago to 604.1 million, beating the state's forecast by 31.4 million, or 5.5%. Here's the thing. The reason they're seeing these record revenues, I think, is because they have, it's got to come from somewhere. If the Department of Finance and Administration's own numbers showed that after the legislative session, they were going to be taking $70.4 million in fiscal year 2020, or I'm sorry, I don't know where I got 0.4. It's just kind of, I'm seeing it in my head though. I think it's 75 million actually. Well, it's just, if the DFNA numbers show that after the legislative session that we just went through, it's a net tax increase of $70 million, meaning, you cut some here, but you increased more than you cut. $70 million more going from the people to the government. Well, then naturally, their revenues were going to increase, right? Now, I know they'd say, well, no, we factored those increases into our budget and everything else. Well, that makes it even worse, quite frankly. That makes it even worse. And you could have funded our roads without raising our taxes, but we're going to go nonetheless and fill up our tanks week after week, and we're going to be paying more money. So anyway, let me know what you guys think of this. I'd love for you to sound off. What are your thoughts? The government getting these record September revenues, and we really need a taxpayer bill of rights. We need something that says if you get this increase, there's some way to turn this money back to the people to try to keep government from growing and continuing to spend more and more of our money, right? If you combine that with the Revenue Stabilization Act that we have, that right now works against us weirdly, but if you combine it with a Taxpayer Bill of Rights, or TABOR, you got something.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro.
Have more intersectional points because they're more oppressed, in theory.
Okay.
That's my understanding of it.
Okay, so intersectionality is essentially like the Victim Olympics.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, so like down at there's a high school, Arkansas School for Math and Science and the Arts. Are you familiar with this? Down in Hot
I've heard
Spring.
of it. I had a couple friends went there.
Yeah, so they got into a lot of trouble here recently because they were doing this privilege walk. So they would take the juniors
back then, because it's a junior and senior. It's only a 2-year school for high school students.
Right.
And as soon as you get there, you had this mandatory privilege walk where you took one step forward if you were from a 2-parent household, and if you weren't, you took one step backwards. And then they make the students like look afterwards, like see the, I guess your intersectionality is what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I guess.
But is that stuff you see that pushed much on the college campuses here today?
I think a little bit. There's some, not so much by professors, but there's like student organizations that probably push it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see a whole lot of it, or at least not here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of times if it's at these other universities across the state, if it's not here, it's kind of on its way. That kind of tends to be what happens. Folks, if you're just joining us, we're talking with Chris Hayes. Chris is the president of the Arkansas State University Republicans. It's a student organization on campus. So you guys try to, like you said, you're going to participate in in Congressman Eric Crawford's chili cook-off. You're going to participate in that here coming up in a couple weeks. What else do you guys do? What other activities?
Well, a lot of it's like, I know last election, we would try and get out and go door knock for people for conservatives that were running against Democrats. We can't really do that when they're primaried by another Republican.
That's understandable.
Impartial.
Yeah.
But something I've been trying to do is just get to know a lot of our local state reps that are running this area and other politicians.
Yeah. So, like, when you guys have a meet, how often do you guys meet?
We try and do it every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Roughly.
And so what's an average meeting like?
Usually I try and always have a guest speaker. Like tonight we have Cole Peck coming.
Okay.
And he's going to try and talk to us about his beliefs, just get to know us a little bit.
Okay.
I either have a local politician, like I said, or someone else. We've had AFP come a couple times, try and visit with us.
All right. Well, hey, that's fantastic. Well, if you ever need a speaker, I'd be willing to. I'd be willing to come. So put me on the list.
Definitely.
Again, we're talking with Chris Hayes. He's president of Arkansas State University Republicans. So Trump. Let's talk Trump. Okay, is he popular on among young people?
Among young people who lean to the right.
Okay.
He's really popular in that he's vilified by people who lean to the left.
Yeah. It depends on what you mean by the word, popular.
Right.
So 2020, how important is this as far as you're concerned? As a young person, I mean, there's a ton of stuff being talked about. If the Democrats were to actually get what they want, you would have this Medicare for all. You would have more of this intersectionality. You would have more this idea of denying the biology of men versus women and that sort of thing. There's a lot of really strange things. You now have the climate change people now talking about how we can't have economic growth. They're now openly saying the answer to climate change is socialism. So you know what I mean? So what are your thoughts about 2020 generally?
I think it's going to be very important that we keep principled conservatives in-house and in power, because you look at the Democrat Party, like you're saying, everything they're pushing is just totally against what made America great, what's kept it great for so long.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. So here's another question, kind of building on the climate change that I brought up, because I feel like I need to bring this up. You have young people who are legitimately scared that things are going to end in 12 years. It's really prevalent over in Europe. Again, it'll probably come here too. But you have a lot of people here, a lot of young people, maybe not in Arkansas, but they really believe that their lives are at stake, that there's going to be massive flooding, that the hurricanes have never happened before. They really actually need to go look back at in the Dust Bowl. I mean, the weather events that happened in the Dust Bowl we probably would have enacted socialism if it happened today, because people would scream, all these massive weather events. But I guess the point is, as a young person, do you know any people that are just like, absolutely climate change, man-made climate change is real to the degree that they claim?
I don't personally know them. However, there is now an environmental club at A-State, and last Friday they had a global climate strike where
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
You know, if you impeach anybody, you need to impeach China, like the entire country of China. I don't know if there's a constitutional provision to just impeach them. I think that the constitutional provision to impeach another sovereign nation might just be a war. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Welcome. It is hour number 2. We really appreciate you guys being with us today. Hey, you know what? You know where I want to start? I got some feedback. So yesterday on the program, we were talking about the Pope County Casino. This was interesting to me. We were talking about the Pope County Casino, and we had Larry Walker on, and boy, we struck a nerve. For those of you who haven't seen it, I mean, Larry Walker with the Citizens for a Better Pope County, he came on and he really exposed a lot of stuff. You know, the fact that tonight we have apparently the Quorum Court in Pope County there is going to try to undo the ordinance, vote to basically make another ordinance that cancels out the ordinance that says you have to have a vote, a separate vote. The people of Pope County need to be able to vote if they want to have a casino or not. So that's very interesting. Obviously, this is in court right now. Boy, but there was somebody that sent me kind of a you know, I don't know, angry Facebook message about our segment that we did with Larry Walker with Citizens for a Better Pope County. Guy's name is Michael Ford, and this is what he said. Listen to this. He said, before you have Larry Walker back on the show, I suggest you either do some research or bring on someone from the other side so you don't have to look silly. Well, Michael, you're welcome on the program, but let me just finish reading your text message here. This local ordinance he's talking about has already had an opinion from the Arkansas State Attorney General saying it's illegal. Really? Is that a true statement? We'll keep going. I'm going to read you the rest first. The attorney that drew the ordinance up from Fayetteville said in a quorum court meeting in Russellville they had tried to figure out a legal way to have a vote but could not. The Pope County Quorum Court wrote a letter for the best choice because the Racing Commission had a letter from an inferior project from Gulfside in hand we could have ended up with if they had decided to take it. I would suggest you check into facts instead of allowing this guy on your show to spout tall tales and outright lies while Paul picks it up and runs with it and disparaging Pope County officials he knows nothing about. I haven't disparaged anybody other than reporting what's already been reported, which is that you guys are having secret meetings. And it was Larry, by the way, Mr. Walker, that read the list of promises by the county judge yesterday. And I knew when he started reading the list of promises and was quoting media reports, when you read politicians' own words back to them, you definitely, you know, when they failed, you hit a nerve every single time, especially locally. I know what I'm dealing with here. Disparaging Pope County officials, know nothing about. I would suggest reading this document here, especially page 2 and 3, and stop making yourselves look like fools and discrediting yourselves. So what I decided to do was I decided to, I sent this message on to Larry Walker. I was like, Larry, you know, what's going on with this? And basically I get back to the fact that, well, lo and behold, that Mr. Ford doesn't have his facts right because the Attorney General has not issued an opinion. So that's the first thing that's wrong with this. And even if she had, she's not a judge. That's true as well. Right now it's before a judge. Attorney General was opposed to Amendment 100 and thought it was invalid as well. However, the state Supreme Court upheld it. So now the AG is representing the Racing Commission, and what she wrote in her reply to our motion for a temporary restraining order against the Racing Commission so that they can't issue a license until this is all settled in court. That's what he's referring to, not saying that it's illegal. Additionally, our attorney from Fayetteville never made that statement that he claims. The statement came from Justice Caleb Moore in an August 13th meeting as the quorum court was trying to justify their actions. Caleb Moore said, quote, "We came to the conclusion that there's no legal way to have a vote," end quote. So the question becomes, when did they decide that? There was never a public meeting to decide that. And I also know, folks, that Mr. Ford here, who sent us this critical message, who is welcome to come on the program, is a major voice in this opposing group that calls themselves Pope County Majority on Facebook. Okay, so what we really have here is a guy who is affiliated, loosely or tightly, whatever, with the people that want the casino. Surprise, shocker. People who want the casino disagree with people who don't want the casino. But we do need to get the facts right. I mean, you can't say the Attorney General issued opinions stating the ordinance was illegal when that, in fact, is not what happened. You say, I don't have the facts, but, no pun intended, in fact, I do have the facts. Would that really be a pun? You're still using the word fact in the proper. Anyway, telephone number 870-275-9799. I'm never one to shy away from a controversy. So we're going to continue to have Mr. Walker back on. And I'll have the opposing side on. I don't mind. I'd rather actually talk to an elected official, though. But I'll talk to somebody who wants the casino. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's in court before a judge right now. And Larry Walker said yesterday that the quorum court's going to try to undo the ordinance that the judge is considering right now. That lets me know that people on the quorum court think that they don't have a case. Not to mention the secret meetings that are well documented. I mean, they're well documented in the mainstream press where they've got quotes from people saying, yeah, they had secret meetings. So the whole thing is say what you want to, but you know why stereotypes exist, don't you? Stereotypes exist because people out there, people and organizations reinforce them every single day, okay? That's why stereotypes exist, and that's why people form prejudices. Sometimes those prejudices can save your life, by the way, but sometimes they can actually help. But anyway, that's not you need to treat. You want to try to treat every situation objectively, don't you? But in this case, do we not have the stereotype of a casino being confirmed right in front of us? Don't we? Like, do we not have a casino comes to town? They dangle money in front of politicians, and the politicians go against the will of the people, and they're having secret meetings, and and they're going to tell us, well, our casino will be different. There won't be the vice, there won't be the problems that come with other casinos, the crime and everything else. It's not going to happen here. Well, just to get the casino, you're already falling into the stereotypical thing that you think of when a casino wants to come into a community. Just a thought. It's just a thought. Listen. Am I opposed to it? Yeah, I'll tell you. I think it's wrong because if I live in Craighead County, and if people in Pope County had voted to force something in my local community, I'd have a problem with it. Yeah, absolutely, I'd have an issue with it. So and I think there's people in Pope County that feel the same way. You had these people pay canvassers to go around and collect signatures to get casinos in Pine Bluff and Pope County and let the other two expand. Okay? So that's the first thing. It was put on the ballot, by people. That in and of itself, before the vote's even taken, that in and of itself is the people exerting their will in I think an unethical way against a local government. It's just it's really sad. So anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll let this thing play out. But if you say that I don't have the facts, that's fine. I mean, that's what everybody does now, isn't it? You hear something, you hear something that you don't like, and so you say, you don't have the facts. You look like a fool. I've been called worse. I think we'll continue to, run the news show, and people are welcome to come on the program if they disagree. They really are. Okay, so can we go over here now? We've been telling you all week about China and what's been going on with the communist Chinese. And we're trying to point out the facts. And this has been an interesting week. Yesterday you had the Democrat Party come out and compliment Asa Hutchinson because he's for Trump's impeachment inquiry, which, by the way, looks even worse today considering Adam Schiff has been caught lying to the media, lying to the people, saying he never knew who the whistleblower was. The fact is, Adam Schiff knows who the whistleblower is and was in contact with him before the complaint was filed, which now means he legitimately is not a whistleblower because he's violated the whole process. But people are trying to defend him and everything else. The whole story is unraveling before our eyes. And so for Asa to have come out and said he thinks it was unwise for President to make the call, that the impeachment inquiry needs to go forward, so that he did say it doesn't need to be long and drawn out. That's not going to happen. But then the Democrat Party of Arkansas compliments Asa Hutchinson and criticizes Rick Crawford and Tom Cotton and the rest of the delegation. It's not a very good week for Asa in that. But it's also not a good week because we also have, we have Rick Crawford going on Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock, essentially saying that we can't trust the Chinese. We can't have these companies coming in here because they are not our friends. We have talked with Brigadier General Robert Spaulding several times, and he told us that there are now machines that China uses to hook people up, to keep them alive, to keep their organs oxygenated after life has left their body so that they can continue to use and create this massive elite forced organ donor. And Gene McVeigh, who is a Republican pioneer here, served his country in the Air Force. He wrote up at genemcveigh.wordpress.com, the graphic Chinese communist bloody human organ industry, and he starts it with this photo of Governor Asa Hutchinson with the Chinese communist flag flying in the governor's mansion, like flying in the one of those little desk flags, I guess. And it says, let's see, it's in the conference room. Not the governor's, did I say mansion? It's in the conference room at the Capitol. Sorry. In the Arkansas governor's conference room, as Governor Hutchinson shakes hands with Yafu Kui, chairman of the Shandong Rui Technology Group. If you need a new heart, kidney, or eyeball, no problem. The Chinese communists might harvest human organs from a Chinese Christian or other dissident at your convenience. I'm not sure exactly how arrangements are made, but Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson and his inner circle are very tight with Chinese communists and are working on bringing their companies to Arkansas. According to a former hospital intern, China is rounding up dissidents and barbarically harvesting their organs while profiting greatly in the process. So the idea is, it's like, why are we doing business with these people? One thing to trade with them. There's a lot of things that are out of control when you're dealing with another sovereign country. But why would you bring them here? And again, Congressman Crawford saying they're not here to help us, they can't be trusted. Yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. They're harvesting people's organs against their will and selling them. I don't think you can trust those people. Hello, McFly? Anybody home? So then Gene McVeigh takes clips from this New York Post article back in June of this year. And I want to read from you some of this, because this is absolutely terrifying. The intern still has nightmares. He was interning at China's Shenyang Army Hospital, where he was drafted to be part of an organ harvesting team. The prisoner was brought in, tied hand and foot, very much alive. The Army doctor in charge sliced him open. I'm going to try to leave out some of the gory details. Exposed 2 kidneys, essentially cut the kidneys out, and the kidneys were placed in an organ transplant container. Then the doctor ordered the intern to remove the man's eyes. Again, this is from the New York Post. Hearing that, the dying prisoner gave him a look of sheer terror because the man is alive. The intern froze. "I can't do it," he told the doctor, who then quickly did it himself. The intern was so unnerved by what he had seen that he soon quit his job at the hospital and returned home. Later, afraid that he might be the next victim of China's forced organ transplant business, he fled to Canada and assumed a new identity. First-person accounts like this are understandably rare. The transplant tourists who come to China are naturally told nothing about the donors of their new heart, liver, or kidney, and those who are executed for their organs tell no tales. Experts estimate that between 60 and 100,000 organs are transplanted annually in China. Multiply that number times the cost of a liver transplant, 170 grand, or a kidney transplant, 130, and the result is an eye-popping $10 billion to $20 billion. The world is beginning to take notice. There are books being written. General Spaulding, we had him on this. Also, this one's mentioned in the New York Post article. Ethan Gutman, author of several books on the subject, believe that the vast majority are obtained by executing prisoners of conscience, like Christians, or the Muslim population they have over there now, or from the Falun Gong sect that they can't stand, this sect of Buddhists. So I want to jump down here because one of the things that we talked about last week with Brigadier General Spaulding was these machines that they now hook these dissidents up to. Okay. There's a photo here of these machines. I don't want to show this photo because it's just too graphic. But they have an actual photo of the machine. It's called a miniaturized ECMO device. Okay, and contrast today's technology with 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was only possible to successfully harvest an organ or two kidneys, a heart, right? The other organs, such as the lungs and liver, had to be discarded because they'd been deprived of oxygen too long. They were now no longer viable. But now, the victims are put on an ECMO machine, which serves as an artificial heart and lung and keeps every last organ fresh enough to be harvested. Before ECMO, a victim's few salvageable organs were worth maybe 250 grand. Now, with ECMO, every organ can be harvested, even the skin, and the victim is easily worth 2 or 3 times that much. ECMO, which has saved countless lives in the West, has had the opposite effect in China. It has accelerated the killing of innocent people. In recent years, China has gone to even greater lengths to cover up the crimes from international scrutiny. They post phony statistics. The world is beginning to wake up to the fact of this organ transplant. And listen to this. China's officially aesthetic Communist Party could not care less about pleasing or displeasing a higher being. It has resurrected the practice of human sacrifice for 2 very practical reasons: to rid itself of troublesome minorities and to turn a huge profit. Now, given that fact, why would we trust the Communist Party of China to come into Arkansas and build our factories and take our taxpayer money and resources and send the profits back home? It's just a step too far. And unfortunately, Governor Hutchinson is ignoring all the warning signs. I mean, there are many more, but that's a big one. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce? the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
Principal conservatives in-house and in power, because you look at the Democrat Party, like you're saying, everything they're pushing is just totally against what made America great, what's kept it great for so long.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Also, in this vein, I do want to remind you guys, let's see, this was the 92nd General Assembly, a House resolution by Representative Dan Sullivan to encourage the United States Congress and the Arkansas Congressional Delegation to work to end organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience in the People's Republic of China. That did pass the House, and a similar resolution passed the Senate. So that's certainly, I mean, it's just absolutely mortifying when you think about it. Something must be done. Hey, when we come back, Washington County Justice of the Peace, Patrick Deakins will be back with us. I saw this headline in the Northwest Arkansas Gazette, an editorial about subsidizing mass transit, especially mass transit going to rural areas. I mean, if nobody uses it, why would you spend money on it? At some point, At some point, I've seen numbers before with this mass transit in rural areas. It's like it'd be cheaper just to buy anybody that needs one a taxi than to continue spending all this money on mass transit. We'll be back in just a moment.
Legitimately scared that things are going to end in 12 years. It's really prevalent over in Europe. Again, it'll probably come here too. But you have a lot of people here, a lot of young people, maybe not in Arkansas, but they really believe that their lives are at stake, that there's going to be massive flooding, or that the hurricanes have never happened before. They really actually need to go look back at the in the Dust Bowl. I mean, the weather events that happened in the Dust Bowl we probably would have enacted socialism if it happened today, because people would scream, all these massive weather events. But I guess the point is, as a young person, I mean, do you know any people that are just like, absolutely climate change, man-made climate change is real to the degree that they claim?
I don't personally know them. However, there is now an environmental club at A-State, and last Friday they had a global climate strike, where from whatever hours they set, they walked out of class and marched around the lawn of the campus talking about how climate change is an issue. This is all spurred from that girl who spoke at the UN here recently.
Greta Thunberg.
It's because of what she said. That was their reaction to it.
Okay, so was it a lot of people? Do you know how many people it was?
I wasn't on campus that day. I saw some videos. It was, I'd say, around 50 probably.
Yeah. You'd think at some point they'd just be like, I don't know, therapy sessions or something. Come together for group therapy. That's essentially what these need to be, because, I mean, I got news for you. I just don't think I know the American people don't want socialism, and I know they certainly are not buying that socialism's the answer to control the weather. I mean, that's what we're talking about. These people think they can control the weather.
Well, I saw an interview with Andrew Yang. He was talking about how cattle farmers should be having to pay more taxes on their cows because of the pollutants they make.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that goes with the anti-meat situation, too.
Right. That was something else he was pushing, was using that as a mechanism to get people out of eating meat, going to more vegetarian or vegan diet.
Here's a kind of a news story on that came out today, Chris. It has to do with a scientist came with a study that said red meat doesn't cause cancer, or they couldn't determine that red meat causes cancer.
Now, weren't they just saying it did here recently?
Yes.
Now, if you're in California, everything causes cancer.
That's true.
You have that little Prop 65 label.
Yeah. Straws. We had a meme of the day the other day with a high capacity magazine filled with straws.
Yeah, I saw that.
You saw that? Yeah. Okay. So, but this scientist, and it was like it's a reputable guy. He's now getting all kinds of backlash because his study found that red meat is fine, and says people need, humans should just continue eating the same amount of red meat. And of course, he's being crucified for it.
Oh yeah, well, you see that with the left. Anytime someone goes against their narratives, they crucify them. They do everything they can to them. Even when that guy Juicy's.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Here we go. Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us as always. It's always a pleasure to have Mr. Patrick Deakins on. He's a Justice of the Peace serving in Washington County. Patrick, how are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm awesome, Paul. What about yourself?
I'm feeling pretty good. So just generally, I mean, I follow what's going on in Washington County, specifically, with the jail overcrowding. That's what we talked about the last time. This idea that, there's a study being done on what to do, and maybe, I know you don't want to raise taxes. So are there any new developments in that?
No new developments there. We're still putting the study out for a proposal. I think that's just about ready to roll out. The county has all kinds of requirements that it has to fulfill to put out a contract like that and a bidding process, which are good. It adds transparency to the process, but it just adds a little bit of time to how that's all going. So, that's kind of where we're at. Other than that, we're just in the full throes of budget season for 2020, and that has been, in my opinion, an absolute circus. So that's what we're dealing with now.
Do you guys ever get any pressure or advice from, consultants that are encouraging you to raise the pay of county workers?
Well, the county contracts with a consultant that comes in, and basically what he does is, from what I understand, a top-to-bottom review of our pay, our compensation. So, right at the start of budget season, one of the committee meetings is personnel, and he came in, his name is Mr. Johansson, and he came in and he basically went over where, all the statistics of the county pay are, and he said that basically what he would recommend is a 3% raise across the board for which is kind of where, the county over the past few years, that's kind of where everything's failed, just an across-the-board 3% or an across-the-board 5% or something like that. So, it was pretty interesting presentation by him. I definitely got the feeling that he was an advocate for the raises of the employees.
Yeah.
Towards the end, he said he was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, Paul. Somebody went back and looked at this presentation. I'm sure this is the exact statistics, but these are close enough for what we're going with. The overall raises at 3% would cost the county around $750,000 a year. And he says, well, we've essentially saved $700,000 by older employees have cycled out of this system. People that have been there longer term and have received more raises have cycled out. So we're hiring newer people, younger people for lower wages, and so we're saving money there. So we should give everyone a raise. So it's kind of that whole, you talk about it a lot in your program. Us that look at government talk a lot about it. We're saving money that we haven't spent yet. You know what I mean? We're lowering a budget. We're finding savings that don't really truly exist, dollar for dollar, if you will. So that's what's concerning about things like that.
Do you find there's always seems to be with local governments, they always try to keep up with each other. So whether it's the local sales tax rate, well, we need to have a sales tax rate that's like Conway or like Fayetteville. That's what they've been saying over in my neck of the woods. And in terms of wanting raises, it's always, well, it needs to be comparable. And so I guess I heard over in my neck of the woods in Craighead County, there's a consultant, I think maybe the same one, who's saying, you guys really need to think about raising your county employees' pay to the level of Washington County. And I'm thinking, well, I've heard that Washington County wants to raise theirs to keep up with who,
Yeah. Yes. Well, they compare us to the private sector. So we know that government cannot compete with the private sector in most all categories, if you will. Now, there are a lot of other benefits that go into that employment that I think make up for the actual compensation. The retirement's great, the medical insurance is great, but you know what I mean. So yeah, we're all trying to keep up with the Joneses and running a race that none of us can ever see the finish line to. So.
We're talking with Patrick Deakins. He's a Washington County Justice of the Peace. There's back on September 25th, a Northwest Arkansas editorial about mass transit. Now, you're mentioned in here. What can you tell us about that? It says here, quote, Justice of the Peace Patrick Deakins gave voice to the doubters, saying he could not justify the expense to the citizens of his rural district. What's the deal with mass transit?
So Northwest Arkansas as a region has had an interest in mass transit for a long time now. There's a lot of pressure on all the municipalities and the government, the county governments, organizations to give money to our transit system over here is called Ozark Regional Transit, ORT. So, we're going through the budget. They're wanting more money, of course. If somebody comes to our budget meeting and wants less money, I'm going to give them a cookie and a star because this never happened before. So anyways, they want more money. The problem that I see with that is I don't necessarily have any strong opinions about a mass transit system between the municipalities. If they want to do that, that's great. I think it needs to be sustainable. However, the problem with Ozark Regional Transit is they're trying to serve the rural parts of the county out here in Washington County. And the way they're doing that is they've come up with this system of on-demand service where if you need a ride into town, you can call them and schedule a special vehicle to come out and get you and bring you to your doctor's appointments or something like that. Now, listen, in a perfect world, that would be wonderful. It's just not sustainable, Paul. It's not feasible. It's not sustainable. And that's what I was asking Mr. Gardner with Ozark Regional Transit when they came and presented to our committee. I said, hey, this doesn't even seem feasible to me. Is this feasible? And his response basically to me was Washington County needs to decide whether or not they want transit. And my answer to that is thank you for being, honest with us. I don't want transit in the rural part of the county. It's just not feasible, so.
And I think, see, this is why I really respect you, Patrick, because I think, we're able to say, hey, they're in a perfect world. Yeah, but we are in a world where we have a limited, finite number of resources. And it's not necessarily always a question of whether it's a good idea. There are a lot of good ideas, but can we actually afford it? And oftentimes the truth is, no, we can't. And that's not an answer a lot of times. People don't want to hear that.
No, absolutely not. And of course, I don't. I'm a big guy for liberty. I don't want to tell anybody where to live. I don't want to force anybody to do anything they don't want to. But there's benefits and consequences to where you live. If you want to live in the rural part of the county, there's services that are provided and there's services that are not provided out there, and that's just part of the decision process of making that decision of where you live. And I don't think that public transit should be into that equation at all. I mean, I think that's just a benefit that you're going to lose if you live in the rural parts of the county, and that's just my opinion on it. I'll be working with the other justices to I want to completely remove Washington County from its participation in Ozark Regional Transit, just because I want them to be able to focus on their main mission, which should be mass transit in these cities. And I almost think we're doing them a disservice by, almost stringing them along, giving them a little bit of money every year, and funding this nonsensical and non-feasible rural service out here that I don't think it serves anyone well at all.
Yeah. Is it a lot of money?
It's not. In the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. I think it's about $20,000 a year, and they want an increase of around $6,000 a year. But once again, I think we're doing a disservice to everyone, because they say that service at that funding level that can't even serve the people anyways. They turn down calls all the time for the service, so it's just a failed system. So. I run into this a lot at budget, too, when people say, well, Patrick, why are you making a big deal out of this? This isn't very many dollars. And I think, well, we're death by 1,000 paper cuts at a certain point, where we can't do the things that we need to do. And everybody was looking for this big-ticket item that we can save or cut. But, I mean, it's all these little things that we're doing that are just nonsensical that I think if we took some appropriate action on some of those, we could maybe find some savings after a while if we had enough of those that would add up. If you will.
I completely agree. And you say, well, it's only $20,000 or whatever, but I completely agree with you. And what's frustrating from just somebody that observes what goes on in government, that argument that they make, well, it's only this much money, can be very effective. And it actually, I'm assuming, can kind of wear a public official down, because if you're just trying to save $20,000 and you've got people that are with each issue, $20,000 here, $30,000 there, but people come out and said, no, you can't take my piece of the pie. I mean, how many battles would you actually have? It's going to be exhausting. And I think that's kind of what they count on. And, that's why, when Ronald Reagan said, once you create a program, it's like the closest thing to eternal life, because it never goes away.
Absolutely. And it is exhausting. And I want the people to know that. Yeah. I mean, I talk to constituents all the time that'll point out particular things to me. And unfortunately, I have to tell them, yeah, we got to be sensible about this, though. We got to tackle this, the bigger fish first, or whatever we're wanting to have a battle on. You can't do it all at once, because here's what I see too with representative government. You can get a body together and they can say, yes, we're spending too much money. Yes, we need to cut this. We need to cut that. But there's somebody across the aisle or across that horseshoe that we sit on that's their pet project, if you will, for lack of a better word. That's what they really care about. They're very passionate about the Ozark Regional Transit or the 4-H or something like that. And so now you have a battle with that other person to win over enough justices to get that particular item funded or unfunded. So, yeah, it's an exhausting process. And once again, I know I always cheerlead this on your program, but people need to get involved, because that does make a difference in how their representatives think and how they're going about their action.
The House, or I guess the state of Arkansas, they did pass an internet sales tax, and I have been kind of encouraging folks at the local level, like your quorum court level or the city council level, to start trying to dig into the numbers and try to figure out what kind of increase in revenue these local governments are going to be seeing, and to monitor it, only to say, to not let it just get spent or thrown in somewhere, to actually say, we've got this increase, so maybe instead of a tax increase down the road to pay for this or that, maybe we take this new revenue coming in from the online internet sales tax and put it away so that we don't have to raise a tax here or there. Are you concerned about this? I mean, have y'all been trying to monitor what this increase is going to look like?
Yeah, we have, and unfortunately, we haven't really received very good information yet. We keep working with our treasurer, and what we keep getting is basically put off about, well, we haven't really seen final numbers roll in yet. It's been implemented, but it still goes through the state process, and they have to middleman it and hand it out to us. So we haven't received our first check, if you will. But yeah, listen, Paul. In general, to me, and I'm pretty sure Washington County is no different than anywhere else. This budget process, capitalization process, is completely broken. We've gone completely backwards of the way I think we should go about things in Washington County in this budget cycle. This is my first one. I'm a freshman on the court. But what we're doing is we're starting with expenses first. I think any of us in our private lives, we take our paychecks and then we plan our spending into what our revenue is. What we're doing on our end so far is we're passing all the budgets with all the expenses in it without a real good idea of what our revenue is going to look like next year, and I don't really foresee that being very sustainable. The second thing we've got to do is we've got to incentivize these department heads and these elected officials. I mean, the whole system is set up for them to grab as much money as they can in this chaotic process in the fall for the next year. I mean, there's no incentivization for them to say, I don't need as much money, I'm going to do without, I'm going to save money here. You know what I mean? There's no reason for them to do that. Why would you do that if your work is simpler and if it's easier to hire, keep hiring, keep buying equipment, and all this kind of stuff? And yeah, the counties have to have some sort of process to put money back to fund for future capital investment. I mean, the jail overcrowding issue. We also have an issue with our radio communication systems we're going to have to replace. These are things that counties know are going to be issues in the future. They know that if their region's growing, they're going to need more services. They know that if the radio system's supposed to last 15 years when they buy it, that 15 years they're going to have to replace it. And these counties need to start getting on some sort of planning cycle to put money back for these projects. Instead, I hate it every time, Paul. Every time something comes up that we need to replace, it's like then the conversation starts. Well, is it a sales tax or a millage increase? And it disgusts me and it makes me sick every time we have to get into that discussion.
You're exactly right. And on the radio front, I know for a fact in Northeast Arkansas, they're Jonesboro's facing the same thing. I couldn't help. I was at a breakfast place the other day, and you know what? I don't even think I could classify it as eavesdropping because the gentleman was just being too loud. And he was associated with the government in some way. I'm not going to go into how, but he was going off on this radio situation, saying we have known, that the radios are only going to be good for a finite amount of time. And so why in the world don't you start to plan 5 years before they go out? Go ahead and start to plan and yet there's just such a lack of foresight. And I think that has to do, you would never do that personally, to your point earlier. But it's just the tendency of men when they are in government, they don't look at it like they're spending and planning their own, with their own money. It's somebody else's, and so they don't really have to be as strict or disciplined,
Absolutely. And I want the people of Washington County to know, while death by 1,000 paper cuts on my end, it's going to be the same for them, and they need to start paying attention and looking at this process because, what I'm already hearing is, you kind of hear these grumblings or these initial talks before like a real big push happens. And I think it's for people to try to get a feeling of where everyone is at in their minds on this issue. But there's already a lot of talk about the Washington County as a county can raise their millage, and that can be done by the quorum court without a vote of the people. They have 6 more mills that they could put on a property tax to increase it. And there's already talk about it. And one thing, the biggest argument I get is, if we raised that 6 mills, most people wouldn't even notice on their property tax bill. So why are we fussing around when we can just raise it? Most people won't say anything. And once again, I think that's a disgusting way to look at the people's money. And the one thing I've told, I was talking to a reporter the other day, and he was specifically talking to me about the radios because he knows I'm anti-tax. And so he was basically trying to, I think, feel me out and say, well, would you support that? It seems like the radios is a great endeavor, right? That's how they get you. That's pain point politics. This is what the first responders in the sheriff's department need. They need radios. Can't you support that? And what I told him was, I will never support a tax increase until I have seen that the government has spent our money as efficiently and as responsibly as possible, and they still don't have the money to take care of our first responders. But absolutely, that has not happened yet. And I don't think I've ever seen it demonstrated. We're not spending money responsibly. We're not spending money as efficiently as we could. And so by then, don't get me back into this corner about pain point politics, about helping out our sheriff's department. We need to find a way to get this done other ways if we're not doing what we need, or we're not acting responsibly in other areas.
Patrick Deakins, I appreciate it, folks. Listen to him. He's in local government, and if you like he says, you should get involved too in your local government, because that's really where you can have a giant impact on big government versus smaller government. I mean, that's really what it's about. Patrick Deakins, it's always great, sir, to talk to you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Folks, I got this text message here I'm trying to figure out, we're talking about the internet sales tax here, and how much money, and I was telling you that I had some sources. When was this? People telling me they're trying to contact the state, the Department of Finance and Administration. They're trying to figure out, how much internet sales tax money is going to be coming in. And the word back from the government is that there's no way to separate the internet tax from the other tax, which that just seems odd to me and seems like it's smoke and mirrors. Also keep in mind that Amazon began voluntarily collecting tax many, many months ago. And anyway, I'm going to digest some of this information that I'm getting right now. But I just, it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be, I guess what I'm trying to, the reason I'm interested in it, because I know it's going to be a lot of money. I know it's way more than they estimated. It was a guess. Representative Dan Douglas on the floor of the House called it a wag, a wild ass guess. Those were his words. And that it's going to be a ton of money going into the government. And I think it needs to be our job to make sure it doesn't just get spent. You know what I mean? Because that's what they'll do. We got to take a break. We're going to be back here with your meme of the day and also a very, very important story, or lack thereof in the mainstream media. I'll tell you about that next.
When all that stuff came out, at first everybody had his back. Then when they saw it was just blatant crap, everybody turned against him for a while anyway.
Yeah.
But
Juicy Smollett, yes, absolutely. But to your point about how, I do want to say one more thing. To your point about how they'll crucify you, they really will if you don't totally agree with everything. So let's say there's like this diehard leftist. Let's say she's a female, and let's say she, believes in this income inequality or the fix for it. Socialism, Medicare for all. Let's say she believes in intersectionality to a degree, but let's say she dares voice up that, you know what, I do kind of feel uncomfortable if we're going to let biological men use the same public restroom as me. I mean, she's done at that point. She's
right.
Cut off, and you're now out of the club if you disagree with one little thing.
Right. Well, you see, even now they're starting to turn against major players like Elizabeth Warren. Have you heard about how there's people on like Wall Street bankers saying they won't back her if she wins the nomination? Then even Mark Zuckerberg has come out and said he wouldn't back her.
Yeah, I did see that. That was also on the news today. And I think Wall Street, that's the whole thing. This, with impeachment. What do you think about Trump? What do you think about them impeaching Trump? Let me ask you that.
Men, do you want to know the dirty little secret the prostate pill industry hopes you never find out? Well, now you can, thanks to the Men's Guide to Prostate Secrets, featuring the latest news and research from one of America's leading urologists, Dr. Dudley Danoff of Tower Urology Group at Cedars-Sinai Medical.
On the trail about what started this whole mess, and so. Anyway, if people are listening, if there are college or college-age students right now listening to the program right now, what could they do, Chris Hayes, if they want to become a member of the Arkansas State College Republicans? Just
start coming to our meetings. We have one tonight at 7 p.m. in the Student Union. And you can follow us on Instagram. It's at AStateCR. I believe it's the same on Twitter.
All right, at AStateCR. Chris Hayes, it's great to meet you, sir, and look forward to doing it again sometime.
All right, thank you for having me.
All righty.
I enjoyed it.
Folks, we're going to take a break, going to reset here. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here's a story that I purposely planned to close with. I knew I needed to, just because I was pretty upset this morning. But you know what? It's no surprise, because the name of Jesus Christ offends. Amber Geiger, a Dallas police officer, walked into a man's home that she thought was her own and shot him. Shot an unarmed man. He was black. And then, of course, she was a police officer in uniform. She thought she was in her apartment, but she was on the wrong floor. And he was killed. The man's name was Botham Jean. Botham is a graduate of Harding here in Arkansas. And so there's been this whole trial going back and forth, and the media has tried very hard to stoke race relations or to stoke racial tensions, to destroy race relations, because this was a white woman police officer that killed a black man. And this is what happened yesterday. She was found guilty, and she was sentenced to 10 years. She was supposed to go away from anywhere from 2 to 99 years. And the brother of the deceased, his name is Brant Jean. And Brant, after the sentencing of 10 years, took to the stand and addressed Amber Geiger, and this is what he said.
And I wasn't gonna ever say this in front of my family or anyone, but I don't even want you to go to jail. I want the best for you, because I know that's exactly what both of them would want you to do. And the best would be give your life to Christ. I'm not gonna say anything else. I think giving your life to Christ would be the best thing that both of them would want you to do. Again, I love you as a person, and I don't wish anything bad on you. I don't know if this is possible, but can I give her a hug, please? Please?
Yes.
You see them embrace. Go ahead and turn it down. And so you see they embrace there and they hug, and it's a message of reconciliation. The reconciliation that only happens, that can only happen when Jesus Christ is at the forefront, at the foundation of what the motivation is, and that's exactly what this brother is doing to this woman who killed his brother. This is a great day. However, as I was driving in this morning in the 6-minute news tab, when Westwood One News, in the 6 minutes they had, in about the 30 to 45 seconds they had to report on this story, they mentioned she was sentenced to 10 years, and they completely left this out and instead interviewed people on the courthouse steps claiming no justice, no peace, stoking racial tensions, and it was evil. It was despicable, and it turned my stomach. And I know why. I know why they don't put that in. Because they'd rather divide. They don't want us unified. They don't want us to unify around the great reconciliation of Jesus Christ. We'll see you tomorrow.